Hi, this is Drew Jones of Drewsguitarshop in Seattle, Washington, and I wanted to do a brief demonstration on how to string up these vintage style tuners with the slotted posts. And I wanted to do this because I get questions about these a lot, and I see a lot of questions on guitar forums posted about these, and so I kind of wanted to just give a rundown on how these are a little bit differently done than the typical modern style tuner with the hole through it. This is a type of tuner that you'll encounter on a lot of vintage guitars and a lot of vintage reproduction guitars. Though you will occasionally find it outside of that context because there are people who prefer this style of tuner, myself among them, and there's a good reason for that, which I'll show you here in a bit. But first of all, let's go ahead and get into how to deal with these tuners as far as stringing up the guitar. So first of all, we're going to make sure our string is tight at the bridge end and not going to go anywhere once we've got it pulled taut, and then we're going to go ahead and pull the string fairly taut through the tuner, through that slot. We're going to go ahead and pinch here at the front of the tuning post. That is the same side as the nut is on in this instance, and we're going to go ahead and draw out a length of string, and we're going to measure it in this case on the A string with 4 fingers. The number of fingers that you use for this measurement will determine the number of times that the string will wind around the post. And just as a rule of thumb, for Fender style headstocks, I like to count out those winds as 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I typically want to go as far down on these posts as possible, and in an instance like this where you don't have the second string tree, it's actually extremely important that you get as much of a downward angle over this nut as possible, and that means winding the string as far down on the tuner as possible. And so we definitely want our 4 windings on this. So we're going to go ahead and measure that again. Yep. And because of the way that these tuners work, we're actually going to give it a little bit of an extra length here. So we're going to actually take about an extra finger width on this side of the tuner, and that's where we're actually going to make our cut. So there we are. So that's our end. Now if you notice in these tuners there's a little hole down in the middle. That's actually so that you can take the end of that string and insert it into the tuner post. That's how that works. Then what you'll do is you'll give the string a little bit of a kink around that split, around that slot there, and then you'll go ahead and wrap manually a couple of times. The manual wraps here also work, incidentally, on the modern style of tuner with the hole through it, as a way to just kind of save some time on the string winding. But once you've got it to this point, yeah, you just go ahead and take a string winder to it and kind of hold tension on it. I always recommend kind of holding the string above the nut until it's tight enough to go down safely into the nut slot and not move around, because if you allow this string to kind of make contact here and tighten up on the nut, it'll kind of mar the surface of it a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and drop that down in there, and that is done. That's how you do it. It's as simple as that. Now I'm going to show you why some people prefer this. So if you've ever done electronics work or cleaning on a Stratocaster, you might have realized that you can't really take the strings off very easily and like get under the pick guard, and that is kind of an annoying issue. And you can very carefully kind of unwind those strings and kind of pull them very carefully through those holes. But a lot of times what you find is when you put them back through and you string it up again, that they don't quite land in the same spot, and the string will end up breaking because it now has a weak point in it. But with these tuners, there's this cool thing where you can just kind of loosen them up, get them to the point where it's kind of opening up like that, and you just pop that off, and bam, that's just really nice, because then you can just take off all the strings just like this, and you can lay them in a convenient spot that's kind of out of the way, and you can do your work on the guitar. And then when you're all ready to zip the thing up again, you just go ahead and slip that back on there, and you tighten it back up. and these land usually right about in the same spot and do just fine with as many times as you want to pop that on and off again. I mean, I'm sure that you can reach some upper limit where it's going to break, but I've had strings on these type of tuners where I've popped them off like that and put them back on many times, and I didn't run into a string breaking problem. So that's one reason that some people prefer these tuners. Another is just the classic look. I mean, they look like a vintage tuner, so if you're trying to, make a hot rod guitar and kind of trying to go for like a 60s or 50s aesthetic, getting some of these tuners will definitely give you that look. There are some disadvantages to these tuners as well, in that these slots are kind of delicate, and so if this guitar takes a fall, these can break off, and I have seen that. Hopefully you're gentle enough with a guitar that that doesn't happen, but that is a thing that can occur with these tuners, and maybe one of the reasons why we don't see these as often anymore. Another thing that is up with these tuners in terms of a weak point is that these tuners oftentimes have kind of a thin tuning key, this portion of the tuner here, and this little guy down here can easily get bent as well if the tuner is dropped. And so if you notice on more modern tuners, this has got a lot more metal in it and a lot more, oomph. And that's to prevent that from happening, because that can even break off if it's bad enough, and at the very least they're really annoying to straighten out when they get bent. So anyway, that's my demonstration on how to string vintage style tuners. If you enjoyed this video, I have many more like it on my channel. If you found this video helpful and you want to throw me a tip, I have a link to my Ko-fi and my Patreon in the description of the video. If you want to subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, that would help me out. And if you want to kick me a one-time tip on Ko-fi, that's also pretty cool too. I also have my website in the description of the video. On that website you can find a player's guide to caring for your instrument, as well as contact information for my shop if you are in the Seattle area and you have any repair work that needs to be done. I always appreciate getting new customers in, and I love working on guitars. So if you have something that's fun to work on, I'd love to get it in the shop. Anyway, this has been Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington. Thanks for watching. Have a great one.